Well, good evening. I'll call this meeting to order. It is the meeting of the Board of Selectmen, February 8th, 2016. This evening, Mr. Somaglia will not be able to join us. He extends his regrets. And Ms. O'Connell is making her way. She was stuck in some traffic, so she will be joining us here shortly. So if I could ask all in attendance here to join me and rise, and I'll ask Mr. McCoy, if you don't mind, sir, start us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sorry. We will begin with the transmitting of Treasury warrants 31, 31A, 32, and 32A. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have tied motions. I'll take a motion from Mr. Newhouse and seconded by Mr. McCoy. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous of the voting members, of the attending members. We have no minutes to approve, and we have, I should say that we just convened and closed an executive session that started at 6 o'clock for discussion of real property issues. That was our first appointment, which was concluded. Sorry for our slight delay in starting the open session this evening. No other appointments are scheduled for this evening, so we'll jump right into communications, and I'll turn it over to the town manager, Jeff Hall.
The first two items on the agenda are connected. Both deal with the Sutton Brook Superfund site. And in the first instance, we received a complaint from the Sutton Brook Disposal Area Superfund site PRP group, essentially alleging that the town during a period of time from 1979 to 1981 was disposing of municipal waste at the Sutton Brook site off South Street in Tewksbury. And the second item is a response from town council to that complaint. So we're, and of course the response from town council is indicating that we do not believe we are a responsible party here. The next item is correspondence from Scott Grant, Chair of the 4th of July Committee, regarding the special permit application. He had asked that I read this into the record, so I'll honor his request. Dear Chairman Shampoo and members of the Board of Selectmen, I'm writing on behalf of the 4th of July Committee regarding the previously discussed issue of establishment of a fund as requested by Board of Appeals member Daniel Veerman. As you are aware, Daniel Veerman has requested the establishment of a fund to compensate immediate abutters of the Swain School site for the damage that they might incur as a result of actions by third parties. Daniel Veerman has requested this as a condition of his approval of the special permit application pending before the Board of Appeals. You will recall that on January 25th, the Board of Selectmen considered Daniel Veerman's request that the town participate in the establishment of such a fund. The board elected not to vote on his request, but rather voted to present an article at town meeting to appropriate $10,000 donation to the 4th of July Committee for the purpose of allowing the committee to establish a fund without the town's participation in such a fund. This vote was taken after it was noted by members of the Board of Selectmen that the town did not want to be, quote, stuck being an escrow agent, end quote, and that the town's, quote, legal team, end quote, had advised the selectmen against participating in such a fund. At your January 25th meeting, I advised the Board of Selectmen that until such time as the committee had an opportunity to discuss the appropriation, I could not commit the committee to establishment of such a fund. Since your last meeting, the committee has further discussed the issue and after consultation with independent legal counsel has voted unanimously to not agree to the fund's establishment or to participate in such a fund. Further, in concurrence with the town and the committee's position, Fiesta Shows has informed the committee that following the advice of its own legal counsel and insurer, it cannot agree to participate in such a fund. The committee's application and presentation to the Board of Appeals were developed over several months of consultation with town officials, including the police and fire departments. We are appreciative of the time invested by Town Manager Jeff Hull, Police Chief Mike Bogonis, Fire Chief Rick McClellan, and others. It is our belief that the application and commitments the committee has made to the Board of Appeals address every issue raised by the Board of Appeals and abutters at the time of the prior application for the Swain School site in 2013. After submission of the application, an additional demand was presented by Daniel Veerman. In order to address this, the committee committed to raise funds for the purpose of paying 2 additional police details dedicated to covering the School Street and Drury Lane area from 8 p.m. to midnight each night of the celebration. It is the committee's position that this solution directly addresses Mr. Veerman's requirement. I am confident the committee's application and commitment satisfy the requirements of the zoning bylaw and that the application is eligible for approval as presented. This belief was affirmed by comments made by members of the Board of Appeals following our January 13th presentation. Thank you for your time relative to this matter. Scott Garantz.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
just as a point of clarification, and I know it's not central to what Mr. Grant's message is here, but I just wanted to make sure that I was clear relative to the vote that this board took on January 25th with respect to asking the town manager to prepare an article for town meeting for an appropriation. And I actually talked to Bev earlier today and asked her to confirm what my recollection was, and I think my recollection was accurate, in that the motion was simply to appropriate $10,000 to be applied to the 4th of July activities. So I know there was some discussion, and I understand why Mr. Grant mentions the word donation. I know there was some discussion about that perhaps being the mechanism, but certainly my intent was just to appropriate the money, have it available for something like the fireworks display, and then hopefully that would free up the capital generated by the operator, transferred to the 4th of July committee, however they want to do it. But if in the end the town addresses a portion or all of the fireworks display and the cost associated with that, that in my mind leaves the 4th of July committee as the applicant to the Board of Appeals in conjunction with the carnival operator just to deal with whatever they deal with. So I just wanted to make that, that point of clarification. I think the board's commitment was to make sure that we did what we could to provide a scenario where the applicant and the Board of Appeals hopefully can work it out. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
That was my understanding.
All right, we'll see how it goes.
And mine, well, to that point, if I'm not mistaken here, Mr. Grant has indicated that his, or the committee, the 4th of July committee has met and voted to not create the account. And so was there some discussion, I recall there was some discussion at the conclusion of our vote when we took this up, that it would be ultimately a moot point to create an article and have the town allocate any funds if the 4th of July committee were not inclined to set up this kind of account. They wouldn't necessarily need that additional set of assistance, if you will. So I don't know. Do we want to proceed with the notion that perhaps they'll identify a way at some future date, or are we taking this letter to mean it's a closed issue? I would prefer not to take it as a closed issue, frankly.
I mean, my thinking is that the manager has budgeted for $25,000 towards the 4th of July activities. Right. I'm not asking the board to do anything. I'm just making sure that I had been clear in my point on January 25th, and that's what the motion read. Let's leave it to the Board of Appeals and the 4th of July committee to do whatever they're going to do. But we know that the manager has budgeted $25,000 if that helps solve the problem. So
Right. The intent in having that obviously was to try to address one of two scenarios. In the one instance, if you know, to follow up on the board's vote to provide a sum of $10,000 to support the July 4th activities. If it ultimately had played out that way or plays out that way, then the article at town meeting would be to that effect. If it turns out, for whatever reason, that you know, the circumstances change and there's the July 4th committee decides not to be involved in a celebration this year or to provide a fireworks display, the funds would be available for a fireworks display.
That's fine, so we'll not take any action other than having had this information read into the record and confirmed, I think, the spirit of our vote a couple weeks ago. Thank you.
Next is a memorandum from me to the board regarding appointment of animal control officer. So you'll recall Ellen Sawyer stepped down on October 21st of 2015. In the last few months, we put together revised the job description to some measure, and also were involved in recruiting. Christopher Sullivan has been appointed to that position effective February 1st. So as part of the process, I've appointed him to the position, but there is, in accordance with the general laws, the authority that is required to carry out the roles of animal control officer are bestowed, so to speak, by the Board of Selectmen. So this memorandum describes that, indicates that I would be looking for a vote from the board to grant the authority that's conveyed by Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 151, and also in accordance with Chapter 193 of the Acts of 2012, which amended the general laws.
Thank you. So do we take that up later in the
There
meeting?
is a board to consider on that,
thank you.
yes. Just an update on the Glen Road, Middlesex lights. The situation there, in some respect, the weather's been working to our advantage because with the lack of snow and the relative warmer conditions, the contractor's been able to be out there and conducting some work on the lights. Mike Woods, the Public Works Director, consulted with Department of Transportation and has been advised that they're technically not obligated to be on that project right now. Is essentially the contractor was using it as fill-in work, but the expectation is, and it's probably at this point, given the weather situation, they may not be out there for a little bit, but they will, once the lights are fully connected, so to speak, they'll be in a flash on and off mode for at least a month, and then the lights will be fully activated. So I think it's fair to say we should anticipate the lights will be operational this spring, and we will certainly update the board as we get more specifics in terms of a timeline, but MassDOT was reluctant to offer any more specifics at this point.
Yeah, I've driven through the intersection the last several days, and I've seen the trucks and the lights, the poles, with the swing arms, whatever they call them, going in, and it's exciting to see that getting closer to coming to completion.
This next memo is also from me to the board regarding the Yentell Farm Recreation Facility. It's just an update. You'll recall that there was a invitation for bid issued on the construction of that project. The bid deadline was February 5th. 11 companies submitted bids ranging in price from $3,845,295 up to $5,568,210. This is on the base bid. There were 3 ad alternates included in the bid, but the good news is that it appears we will have the ability to award, or I will have the ability to award a contract that is within the budget. $4.8 million is what was budgeted. At the moment, Green International, who is the engineering design firm that we have on board, is reviewing the application or the bids to confirm that the lowest priced bid is eligible for award, and I will be receiving a recommendation from them. But so that's good news. I would just also note that the add-alts, one of those add-alts was to the construction of the footpath from the main part of the site to Textron. The second piece, second add-alt, was the installation of sleeve footings in the artificial turf field to support a soccer net and football goal post. And then the third add-alt is the actual soccer net and goal post unit. So I've got to go through the bid to determine how many of those add-alts we can put into the bid, but it was set up in such a way that if the price is permitted, we would be able to include those pieces. So it appears that we'll be able to include some of the add-alts. Whether we can include all of them, I need to look at the prices specifically, but
Is there a prioritization
Yes.
of how they rank? So
yes. So the first priority is the path, the second priority is the footings for the posts, and the third priority would be the soccer goal post and the football goal post. So if we can get all three done, we will certainly look to do that.
Thank you.
Next is a memo from the town accountant, Mike Morris, confirming our free cash number. Department of Revenue has notified the town that free cash has been certified in the amount of $15,561,932. You'll recall that, so this is for the period ending June 30, 2015. You'll recall that last year, for the period ending June 30, 2014, the number was approximately $14.4 million. So we're still moving in the right direction. And behind that memo is the breakdown, which is received from the Department of Revenue. The next piece of correspondence is the actual document from the Department of Revenue that reflects the amount. There was an initial amount that was submitted of $15,033,648. Mike Morris and I looked at the numbers. There was an amount of something in the order of $500,000, $522,000 that was associated with the MWRA, which was essentially being charged against our free cash number, and so Mike was in touch with DOR and had that modified, so that's why the number went from 1533 up to 15.5. So that was to the good. We have a letter from Mary Jane Handy, a letter from Joan Butler, Executive Director of Minuteman Services. Minuteman Senior Services, once again, excited to participate in the National March for Meals campaign. She describes the campaign and invites board members to attend. And if you're interested, just let Beverly know and we'll make her aware of that.
Thank you. Hey, Jeff, can I revert back one just to the free cash certification? While I take it that the memo from Mr. Morris and the backup that certifies it at 15.5 and change, I like to say change, 61,000 change. Will we get another letter from Mary Jane Handy codifying the actual 15,561,932 at some point after Mr. Morris, corrected the MWRA chargeback?
Well, this revised backup, which is referenced as free cash calculation, this was from their office, so
okay.
that is the confirmation.
Thank you.
We have correspondence from Jill Reddish from Verizon. This is the annual report that they provide on customer calls, customer complaints, if you will, and it just tabulates the number of calls they received on issues ranging from billing to equipment. Most of it, as you can see, is equipment related. This is a requirement of their license. Similar correspondence comes from Jane Lyman, who is the Senior Manager of Government Affairs at Xfinity. Again, the same report essentially for the one-year period. It references billing and equipment and so on. Under Board to Consider, the Board is asked to consider signing the warrant for the presidential primary election, which will be held on March 1st. And just to review the precincts, so precincts 1 and 2, Boutwell School, 17 Boutwell Street, precincts 3 and 4, Wildwood School, 182 Wildwood Street, precincts 5 and 6, Town Hall, 121 Glen Road. The election will be held on Tuesday, the first day of March, 2016, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. For the following purpose, the cast their votes in the presidential primary for the candidates of political parties for the following offices. Presidential preference for the Commonwealth State Committee man, 1st Essex and Middlesex Senatorial District, State Committee Woman, 1st Essex and Middlesex Senatorial District, Town Committee, Town of Wilmington, and hereby hereof fail not and make return to the warrant with the doings hereon at the time and place of said voting.
So, there is a need for a motion to sign the warrant for the presidential primary election to be held on March 1st.
Make a motion so moved as described by the town manager before us.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous of the 4 of us. Interesting. At least it's interesting to me anyway. I will make note of the precincts that we'll be having and the locations that we'll be having our election held this and in the future. I took note of the news last night in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but I don't know the nuances of what happened, but there was some change in the orientation of the precincts and the way that parking was going to be handled at Merrimack High School, and the wait lines were preposterous, and the news wasn't about the high turnout, but rather about how it wasn't really wasn't conducive to their election process. So it made me feel more reinforced that we had made the proper decision a few weeks ago to leave our polling locations alone.
You should have taken a lesson from us, if that's what you're saying.
I was trying to give us a collective pat on the back.
Next is a Board to consider request from the Recreation Commission to use the town common to conduct the Easter egg hunt. Debbie's letter just notes on behalf of the Wilmington Recreation Commission requesting permission to conduct the annual Easter egg hunt on the town common on Saturday, March 26th at 2 p.m. We cordially invite members of the Board of Selectmen to join the festivities as spectators or volunteers. Volunteers should be at the town common by 1:15 p.m. In the event of rain or poor ground conditions, the event will be held at the middle school cafeteria and gymnasium.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion's made
Second?
and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you.
This next one is a board to consider the approval of the slate of election workers for 2016. Do you want me to go through the names, or?
What has been convention, I don't feel a personal need for it. I would, unless one of the members would like to hear the names, the roster read, it certainly could be provided, and it is available for the record.
I'd move to appoint the election workers as set forth in the memorandum from the town clerk to the board dated February 5th.
I'll accept that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you.
This next one is a request that had come in by a Mr. Ken Brown to use the Rotary Park playground area on Saturday, March 19th, 12 to 3. He's having a party for one of his children. It just notes in the email I'm writing today to ask for the right to hold a birthday party for my two sons in one of your public parks, the one that I think is across from the street from the Wilmington Police Station, March 19th, 2016, between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. So as I've indicated in the past, certainly we cannot guarantee that other members of the public won't be there, but there's no conflict.
There's no scheduled events or anything.
No.
So certainly, we hope that they have a wonderful birthday party. Is there a motion to approve the request? Yeah.
Just gonna ask a tactical question. I mean, I probably shouldn't ask this now. I should have asked it probably a while ago. But when people do that, do you tell them like no, gas grills, things like that? Do they know? Like they just like? Do we say what they can and can't do? I know this is kind of a random question. I don't mean to go random on you, but I mean, do you restrict what they can do?
I'm trying to.
Someone have a conversation with them about?
Well, we send a letter out just indicating that it's approved, or if it is approved by the board. And we do provide some measure of guidance. I don't know that we go through a long list of do's and don'ts, but we do communicate with them what. I don't specifically recall that we include in the letter. Beverly, you would know more than I. You're Yeah, we typically, if they raise the issue about cooking out and all, we would not.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just
authorize that, but
curious,
yeah,
I
it's
just said it was random, but I mean, if someone shows up with a circus and open flame or something, I just didn't know.
And we certainly haven't had that kind of an issue. The letter's pretty straightforward. It
Okay.
doesn't really put a lot of restrictions on there.
Okay, thank you.
So unless there's additional questions, I think we do need because it's a formal request, I think we should take a motion, take a vote.
Move to grant the request.
Motion's made,
Second?
seconded. All in favor? Unanimous.
And then the final item under board to consider is a request to appoint the animal control officer in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 151, and vest him with the rights as described in the general laws.
Thank you for your recommendation on that as well.
I would just note, the intent was to have Mr. Sullivan here this evening. Unfortunately, he's unable to be here, so I'd like to bring him in at a future meeting and just introduce him to the board.
Yeah, I think that would be prudent and
And just as a question before, first of all, I support it. I do agree with the manager back then. It makes sense for us to have our own animal control officer as opposed to regional with the other communities. But I know the job's like Monday to Friday. I mean, obviously, stray dog's not gonna listen 9 to 5. What do you do on a Saturday or Sunday relative to the animal control officer? If there's an issue with a dog, is he still gonna respond to that? I assume that's.
Yeah, there is overtime included in the budget. It's, I think the instances on weekends would be limited to the more serious issues as opposed to
Sure.
what might be considered the more run-of-the-mill instance. Also, the hours have not completely been finalized, other than the fact that it's a 40-hour-a-week position, but the intent would be to have at least one day of the week where he comes in later, starts later in the morning and works later into the evening, so that you know, to the extent there are issues with dog owners, he's able to meet with them when they're home from work.
Because I thought the job description, it would've been a little bit more flexibility because of the hours. I thought, you know, I didn't know if it was gonna be set time. I thought if there's an issue on a Saturday and Sunday, that the animal control officer would respond to that. That's my only concern.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do support that. I just didn't know, because I know in the job description, that's what I thought it was stating. The hours hadn't been flexible, so I would assume Saturday or Sunday, you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, if it is going to be typically Monday to Friday, if there are instances where the dog officer is called upon, you know, to come in on a Saturday or a Sunday, if it's a more serious issue,
Yeah,
then
sure.
they'll be brought in and he'll be,
To
you
deal
know,
with
paid
it.
at, you know, for that time in.
All right.
So I would accept a motion to approve the new animal control officer per the manager's recommendation.
So moved?
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? I see none. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Public comments. Hello all. Anybody have questions or comments to make this evening? I see none. Thank you for being here. New business and committee reports. I'll start with Mr. Newhouse if you have anything.
I don't, thank you.
Mr. McCoy.
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. O'Connell?
I do not, thank you.
Light duty tonight. Nor do I. I only had that one comment that I was going to make about the election process last night. I've already made it. So, Jeff, important dates, please.
We have the Finance Committee meetings continuing, the next one being tomorrow night at the library. Actually, it's listed as the Banda Room. I think it's, given a recent change here, it's going to be in the meeting room upstairs, second floor. 7 p.m. Topics covered: recreation, library, and elderly services. Then the Finance Committee meets again on February 16th. Town Hall, Room 9, 7 p.m. The Fire Department budget will be discussed. February 17th is the next meeting of the Entel Farm Development Committee, Room 9, 6:30. Next Board of Selectmen's meeting is on February 22nd, here in Room 9, 7 p.m. February 23rd, Finance Committee meeting, Room 9, Police and Central Dispatch. February 25th, Finance Committee meeting, Room 9, Veterans Services, Town Clerk, Historical Commission. March 3rd, Finance Committee, Room 9, Shawshene Tech. And then March 8th is the final Finance Committee meeting here in Room 9, Wilmington Public Schools.
Very well. Unless there's anything else, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's
Second.
made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Good night. Thank you for being here.